Everybody, please welcome Radomir Djoković. Applause. Yes, the stage is yours.
Hello. So, a few months ago, I've realized that actually there are many topics I find interesting and many things I use every day of work, and I would like to talk on conferences and meetups. And then when I was about to choose one topic, it was much harder than I thought. I started thinking I use every day on work React, Node.js, Redux. Maybe Redux form are also interesting, a lot of interesting things here. But it's hard to choose one. And then, when thinking more what actually helped me every day on work, and what makes me deliver better code on time, better quality code, I've realized it's more about concepts and good practices than about libraries, frameworks, languages. So that's how I decided to talk about test-driven development. And yeah, I'm Radomir Djoković. As I mentioned, I will be talking about test-driven development. I'm working as a full-stack developer at TopTal with Node.js and React. And here's maybe a story how I really decided when I was thinking to go with test-driven development. About 3 years ago, I had a job interview when I needed to deliver a web application based on some requirements, and I had 10 days for that. I had enough time. It wasn't really a lot of features, so I said it would definitely be better if I had good test coverage. I will do test-driven write tests before code, and probably in this small project, it will slow me down a bit, but I will have better quality of code. So probably 7 days after, when I finished most of the work, I've realized in these requirements that there are a few things maybe that could be understood in few ways. So I wanted to double-check if I did it in the right way. I was pretty sure it should be implemented as I did. So I sent email to my interviewer just to be absolutely sure. And when I got response, it was pretty different than I thought. A lot of things that I thought are not required, and I supposed that I don't need them, I actually need to add them. I need to make a lot of changes in code I already have. I need to make some changes in user profile, in permissions. These are changes which will affect most of the project. And some more changes and a lot of new features. So I was out of time. And since I was out of time and I was required to deliver these functionalities until the end of 10 days, I said, maybe it's not the right moment to think about infrastructure. Probably I will just do it as soon as possible and forget about good infrastructure, forget about good code. Let's just give these features until this deadline. Anyway, I will drop this code. It's not some project that we will work 2 years after. We will drop it after 10 days because it's only an interview project. So I said, I don't need to write tests for new features and for features that I need to edit, to change. I will remove tests. I don't want my tests failing. They are working in current way. So I will just remove them so I can do these parts without tests. And I started working like that and got more slow and slow. Every new feature, I was always thinking, did I forget something while I'm coding? Did I use all cases? And for all features that I was editing, also, And definitely for all these requirements, I saw there is not enough time to finish them. So the next thing I did, I was searching for new job interviews. I will not be able to finish this in 10 days. It's OK. I mean, probably most of you are software developers. You know there are a lot of job opportunities. You will not get this job interview. You will apply to another one. It's not the end of the world. And then I thought, it's 2 days more, or 3, not important. I don't really want to give up, but the direction in which I'm going definitely will not lead me to completing this project on time. I need to change something. I need to think in different direction. And when I thought once more, I realized that I was much faster when I was writing tests than without them. Because I was always sure that what I wrote works. I will not get random bugs in all functionalities because I removed tests for them. When I write code, I will be pretty sure that what I wrote works. So I dropped the changes for the last few hours, which led me to nowhere. And for new features, I wrote tests, then code. Write tests, then code to implement this. For features that I need to change, I change test. For new functionality, then I change feature. And basically, it speeded me up. I always had documented my code, how it works. Not by writing documentation, but with these tests. I see how it works in the new way, this function, so I'm sure that it works in that way and how I should use it. And I'm always sure that it works right. So the final interview came, and I managed to finish all these things on time. And yeah, I'm happy to say that I passed this interview, and things went well. And I was a bit confused that on this short period, tests can speed me up. Because I thought it's more for long term, for having old code, working with a lot of people. And since it can speed us up on these small projects, when I'm working by myself for 10 days, probably we should ask ourselves how it works with bigger team. When we have a lot of people involved, we have long-term projects. So first of all, in bigger team and a longer project, we definitely need tests more, because we need a lot of old functionalities that we want to be sure that they're working. We need tests for them. We need tests on code review when someone wants to push something, that be sure that it works in the way we want to work. But probably it's not just that. When I come as a new to the project, usually tests are best documentation of some part of code, on some component of some function, endpoint, whatever we are talking about. Because if I don't really see by the name of the function what it should do, how it should work, usually I go to tests, I see how should I call it, what parameters, what cases it covers, how can I use it, and I see in every scenario what I should expect to return, what kind of error I will get, so much faster documentation between people. So effect on bigger projects with more people should be much important for us and much better. And it takes us a bit to basic concepts. I was talking about test-driven development for more than 10 minutes, and I didn't even mention what test-driven development is. So probably some of you are aware of concept. How many of you actually heard of test-driven development and what it is? And how many of you use it every day? OK. not weekend. So the basic concept, actually, of test-driven development is writing code in 3 steps. First of all, we need to make infrastructural changes to support this new feature. And then we write tests and write code to cover that test. Write tests and write code after which these tests will pass. And repeating this process a lot of time. We need to make these infrastructural changes before writing tests, because sometimes if we want to refactor something, if we need to change what parameters function, endpoint, or component accepts, we first need to do this refactoring or infrastructural changes, so we can write tests with that. Probably before these infrastructural changes, we can't write tests because it doesn't accept right data. And the main idea with test-driven development is that we do it in that way that it speeds us up. Or at least it takes the same amount to test it manually as writing tests and writing code. So we don't lose anything. We write tests and code in the same amount of time that we need to test it manually, writing code. And after all, we get tests. And it's nice in theory, of course. We basically know concepts, and it sounds well in theory, but what happened in practice? I mentioned practical example when I did project by myself, pretty short practical examples, and some guesses how it should affect on bigger teams and bigger projects. But in practice, sometimes we don't write tests at all, or really small coverage, and it slows down after some times. Or we write tests, but we spend a lot of time for these tests, and it slows down. Because writing tests is too slow for us. And it will take us to some problems, because maybe at the moment I have enough time to write tests, even writing tests is too slow. So I think I'm on the right way. I can do it for a month, 2, or some period. But after some time, probably we will come to the point where product team will come to us and say, we need this feature as soon as possible. We need to release something as soon as possible. We need new product to get on time, and it's not our first matter, good infrastructure, good test coverage. On the first place is customer, product team, and what we need to sell, and we need to come to market on time. So what we are going to do? I mean, I think that all of you know the answer. In this case, we will stop writing tests, because we need to be faster. So we will not write tests until the next release. And we have this part of code not tested. I mean, tested manually. And it will take us to a pretty problematic point. We will need a lot of things to test manually. We will probably have a lot of bugs to fix. And we will need, if we want to cover it later with tests, much more time to cover it later than we needed while we were writing that. And basically, this takes us to disaster of project. And it's not, I mean, we can blame product team, but it's not their fault. Definitely, we need to hurry up and we need to release things because of time. We can't wait. So we need to write tests in the way that they will speed us up. So when product comes to us and say, we really need to be fast, we really need to deliver this on time, we say, OK, we will start with writing tests and code. We will do it test-driven development, because it will speed us up. And actually, that's how I named this speech. When we need launch as soon as possible, we will start with tests. And how can we achieve that? Basically, take us to good practices. And having tests which speed us up is not that easy. And definitely, I will not be able to cover everything in 45 minutes. Probably it takes years of working and learning things. I mean, maybe not yours, depends, but definitely need some experience and work of that. But we can cover some good practices, some ideas, and direction in which all of us should go. So first of all, I'm repeating myself, is writing tests before code. I said it a few times already, and maybe you got bored with that, but I'm repeating this because pretty much all of you are aware of concepts of test-driven development, and pretty much all of developers, and very low percentage of developers is actually using it. So that's why I'm coming to this point again. And I think I was pretty much the same. So I remember a few years ago in previous company, we went to lunch and we had discussion about test-driven development. So I definitely said, yes, I'm working by test-driven development. Always I write codes before test. And I didn't. I mean, but no one can check it. It's cool to do it. It's good practice. Why I shouldn't say that I'm doing like that? They can't know. I usually put these things in same commit, so they are not looking at my screen all the time. And after this discussion, everyone actually agreed, and everyone is doing test-driven development, writing tests before code. And I'm pretty much sure no one did. I can claim that maybe there wasn't one person, but I think no one did it by that. So when we were walking back to work after lunch, a friend asked me about some feature and when it's going to be finished. And I said, don't worry at all. I already implemented it. I tested it manually. I just need to add tests. So I just said that I was lying a few minutes ago. They just started to laugh. They said nothing. And don't be person that I was a few years back, because this test-driven development and this practice is not there so we can say we are doing it by test-driven development. It's not there that we can claim we are using good practices. It's basically there to help us, to speed us up, and to get better quality code faster. And we should probably try using it. So after this work, I've started with few friends new project where we could actually, starting everything from scratch, so we are deciding about all infrastructure, how we're doing things, and whatever. And we sat down and said, this is our chance to get much better infrastructure and much better code than every project we were working before. We really got tired of this old code, problematic code that take us a lot of time to refactor, or there is looking like that because someone started like that. So one of the things that we decided we want to improve and make it much better than ever, we said, let's cover every possible scenario with tests. So we started working project like that. And it didn't take us to the right direction. We spent a lot of time just thinking what are every possible scenarios, and also sometimes included not really realistic scenarios, just to have tests for everything. So we were delivering a really low amount of features for a huge amount of time. So we said, OK, what can help us speed us up with this work? Could something help us to know what we need to test? Is there some library that will tell us, you need to add tests for this, but you don't need to add tests for that? And we came up with the idea. In Jest library, we can use this coverage percentage of code by test, so it can tell us what amount of code is covered by test. So we said, OK, we can't do it in an old way, but maybe let's make it 100% of coverage. Library will tell us what's not covered, what line of code, what if, so we will use it like that. And it also took us in very wrong direction. I think it's pretty common mistake going for 100% coverage by these libraries. So that's why I'm putting it up. To explain in which really direction it took us, it would be pretty hard because it's a bigger project with a lot of features. I can't mention everything. So I created pretty small project as example, and definitely same direction where we went, so I will go to this example. To show this, I've created actually for Web API one controller. I need one controller that will save to database football match result. So I have only one table, which will have 2 scores for 2 teams and 2 names for these teams. The simple thing, just it's easier to discuss on simple controller. To implement this, I did actually 2 implementations of these controllers. I created first controller where I didn't write tests at all, so I have 0 coverage. And in both cases, I use MongoDB. So in first case, I use Mongoose, like ORM, that will take care about writing to DB, validation of data and everything. And second example, I've created 100% of coverage, and I wrote directly to MongoDB. So this first example, I just wrote one test which says if 1 is equal to 1 to have something running, but as you can see, in all files, I have 0% coverage percentage. And the second example, I have 100 coverage percentage, and I needed 11 tests to write that. So think once more. I'm writing a really simple endpoint and really simple controller for that. Just writing one entity to the database, and I need 11 tests for that. It's probably not needed to say that it's too slow. How many tests I will need for some complex component or some product? But at least I'm 100% safe. I have 100% coverage. 100% is probably everything, so I have covered all scenarios. So I can be sure that it's working. It's too slow, but I can be sure that I don't have bugs, I don't have corrupted data, but still slow. And it takes us to the next question is, can I be sure that it's working? To do this checking, I triggered these 2 endpoints through Postman and sent few requests. And let's see the results of database that I got. In first one, it's 0% coverage percentage. I have data which pretty much looks as it should. Scores for teams are integers, 0 or bigger, and these team names are strings. It's just second part of this table 1 for first example. I don't have tests, but I don't have bugs because it's a really simple thing. Probably the simplest thing I could do. When I go to second table where I have 100% coverage, first part of table also looks good. But in second part of table, I've got as a second team name integer. So when I've triggered integer, it didn't convert it to string. I've got it saved as a number. And it's a bug, definitely. I want strings and team names. So there is something wrong happening here. I have 100% coverage, and I thought that it makes me 100% safe from bugs, but I have bug. In first example, when I tried to put number, it converted to string, this first name, in second entity, so it's working good, even though I don't have tests. And I need to confess you something. I've created this bug on purpose, so I can show it on conference. I can show it example what kind of bugs we had, so I've created bug in that way that I have 100% coverage of controller with 11 tests, but I still have bug. But I need to confess you one more thing. And that is, I've created one more bug, and that wasn't on purpose. And I was pretty shy because of that, because I'm writing the simplest controller ever, and I'm making bug. And that bug, actually, you can see here. When I was putting this data to Postman and to prepare these screenshots for conference, I've got second team score is required when I put 0 to second team score. So I said, maybe, do I have some connection problems or something? No, I don't. And then I actually read what was the message, went to code, and realized what happened. Since I was trying to do this as soon as possible, I've copied this checking for team name, where I'm checking if team name is falsy, is JS, and did the same thing for team score. And since 0 is falsy, I get bug here. OK, so I have a really simple controller with a lot of tests, 100% coverage, and 2 bugs. And this bug is huge, because on football games, it's pretty often that one team has score 0. And it makes us ask 2 questions. Isn't 100% coverage safe? And which of these 2 controllers is better tested? This one without tests, or this one with 11 tests and 100% coverage? OK, first question, you already probably saw in this example that it's not safe. But how could it be possible? Basically, these percentage coverage checks how much of flows are tested in our code. But if we don't write code for something, we don't need tests for that in that case. It's not percentage, it's not coverage of our requirements. It's coverage of our code. So basically, we write tests. This takes us to write tests after code, and it makes us write tests that will cover our code functionalities. So it's really frequent. If we make bug in code, error in code, we will repeat same bug in tests. We will cover just our code to work in that way that we wrote it. And if we have bug, we will write tests in that way that they also work in the wrong way. If I don't have check for something, I don't need test for that check because it can't find it, it doesn't exist in code. It's not covered by tests, but it doesn't exist in code, so we don't need to put it in tests. It's still 100% coverage. And second question is, which of these two is better tested? And to answer that, it's not really that simple. We can say we have more tests. The first one doesn't have tests at all, so probably it's not good tested. But to answer that question, we need to dive into code and to see these controllers. So my first controller is using ORM. I get new game, I save it to the database, and that's all. For validation of my data, I write a schema like this, but I don't need any ifs. I don't need any checking. A library will do it for me. And library is already really good tested. So I didn't write any tests, but I use library which is really good tested. And in second example, I've created validate game function and tested it by myself. It has a lot of ifs and checkings, and I have tests for them, but definitely I couldn't test it that much good as library that created a lot of people, and already a lot of people is using it. So when we think once more, we have first controller without tests, but using really good tested library, and it's much better tested than the second controller when we wrote this by ourselves. So having good tested code is not just about how we write tests, but it's really important how we write our code and what's the infrastructure of our code. And when we choose if we are going to write something by ourselves on use already done component, third-party API, and we think it's faster to write it by ourselves, always think about testing and how much time you will need to test those things that you wrote by yourself, and things that you used which are done, you can say they are already working. So I don't need to write tests for Mongoose in this example. Pretty much, I went with few examples what we shouldn't do. Like we shouldn't ignore tests, but we shouldn't test everything, shouldn't go with 100%. But I didn't really say much what should we test and how should we do it. And that's not something that I can tell in few sentences. And that's not something that someone can explain in 5 minutes or 5 hours. But how can we learn what to test? And maybe a good way to learn what I need to test is opposite that what we usually do on our work. It's pretty common. When I'm in company, I write my code, I write tests for it, I push it, and then after all, QA department is in charge to do final testing, to confirm that everything is working. So if they don't find some bug, it's their problem. It's their error. They should find it. If they need to do a lot of manual testing because I didn't write tests for something, it's hard for them, not for me. They will do it. They can maybe employ more people to do this testing, but it's not really hard for me. Do we have some QA guys that could feel some pain like this? Not OK. Mostly developers. And if, as developer, I am in charge for these features to work, after I don't write tests for something, I will need to test it manually to be sure that it works. Next time, it's tedious and it takes a lot of time. Next time, I will write tests for this, probably. Or if I'm pretty sure that some part is working and I don't need tests for that, after I'm in charge for this part, I can skip these tests. Definitely, it's impossible to test everything. But if I'm in charge at the end to test manually my features and in future sprint to see that it works, my writing tests is basically automation of my manual work. And probably I will develop a way of thinking what I need to test better and what I skipped. Maybe I got some bug because I thought it's OK, but I need to test it. But when I find this bug, I will realize this part of code needs more tests. Also, I will realize in which things I don't need that much tests. Since it's possible to test everything, if we want to keep up our speed, in this way, probably we will learn what we need to test good. So we are pretty much close to the end. And to sum up these things, definitely we need tests, and definitely we need to write them fast. To do that, we need to work on our infrastructure of code and of our tests. Try to use as much as possible done components which can work for us. And try to develop feeling what to test and what part we need to test. And that's probably the best way to do it, is take in charge for ourselves about some feature that works, that they works in the direction we should. So I think the main idea from here is to try working on this and to try out doing these things test-driven. Probably it will speed you up. I think that was all for this, what I wanted to say, so I would be happy to answer some questions.
Yeah. Thank you. So there's lots of questions. First one is how to be assured of the quality of tests themselves, how to measure them.
Well, the last thing that I was talking is basically about that. It's not really possible to be assured absolutely about quality of tests, and there is no library that can tell it for us. But if we go with manual testing by ourselves, you can think, do I need to test this manually or not? And if you say no, because it's important for me, but I have tests for it, you have covered that feature pretty much. For some other thing, like here, I just have 3 lines of code and using library. I could write a lot of tests for that, but also I could be sure that library, just this schema is good. I'm pretty sure that I don't need tests for that part. So there is no magic how you can be sure absolutely, but I think by testing it manually and taking things in charge, you can improve it and get some idea.
So the next question is, what is the minimum acceptable test coverage in your opinion? Enterprise apps can be huge. Ain't no one gonna time for that.
Minimum test coverage. Well, it's pretty much similar question like previous one. I don't think that we should really pay much attention about percentage of coverage of our tests. It's more about what scenarios we covered. We probably need to pay more attention of things with permissions, things with security, potential security bugs, than on some other parts. But there is no like final idea about this percentage coverage, and it's not really something to rely on. We can have, like this example, 100% coverage, which is bad covered, and we can have 0% coverage in this example. It's not really good covered, but much better than 100%.
Yeah.
So
there's an interesting one. If you had to choose just unit tests or just functional end-to-end tests, what will you choose?
If I have to choose one part of tests, on backend, I think I would go with integration tests if it's the option. But it's a question between unit tests and end-to-end tests.
Yes.
I think probably it's definitely hard because for some components you need unit tests to cover every possible scenario. With integration tests, it's a lot of time, but sometimes we need them. Probably we need them both for some parts in different.
You have a simple controller, 100% coverage, and 2 bugs. How did you get a job?
Well, one bug was on purpose. Second one was trying to do things fast and a bit tired, but yeah, definitely.
Does the whole team need to use TDD for it to be viable, or can a developer start using it even if others aren't?
Sorry?
So basically, if only one person is using TDD, is that okay, or entire team has to use it?
Okay, so definitely entire team needs to write tests. It's not enough if one person just writes tests and other don't. We are losing point. But if you have other part of your team writing tests after code, and you write tests before code, you can start like that. Because it won't be that problem for you that it will slow them down and maybe not write tests in that good way because they will cover things how they work. If they skip it, they will not cover it. But I think that it's okay if you can't convince other part of the team to do with TDD, you can start doing TDD. Just you need them writing tests, maybe not by TDD, but it's okay. And
TDD or backend, frontend, or both?
Definitely, it's my really good question, actually. And definitely, much better impact is on backend. On frontend, on some parts, it makes you impact. You can do it on frontend, but mostly significant, it's like on backend, it will much more speed you up and much more improve quality of your code. On frontend, it's good, especially on some services that you are using, but sometimes it's hard to do it on frontend, much harder. Integration tests and unit tests on backend, it's perfect usage for it.
What about code review? Isn't it good practice to submit your code for other people to check before even testing? That's not TDD too.
Your code review before writing tests?
Yes.
But it's definitely opposite to TDD.
Yeah.
Definitely, not a good idea.
And the last one is TDD aims to completely eliminate manual tests. How to automate visual tests then?
You can't remove absolutely manual testing. I think it's definitely one really good example is visual tests, but also on some functionalities you need part of manual test. But you need to reduce it as soon as possible, as much as possible. And probably with doing this manual testing, you will learn where you need more TDD.
That's all. There is no more question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.